correct, Mayor? 78 to 82?
Yes.
Okay, all right, so Mayor, we're gonna turn it over to you. I didn't want to wait till you sat down before I asked you to get We're ready for you.
You want to stand, or you can just sit too?
No, I'll get up there and stand again.
Okay.
If I fall down, y'all keep me.
Yeah, we'll catch you. Okay.
And when they gave us the invitation, I thought, now what in the world are we gonna do? Two mayors trying to figure out what you wanted us to say. I'll just give you a little background. I was born in Moultrie, Georgia in 1932. And a lot of you know Terry Powell. That's my brother, one of them. Tonight I have my oldest son here, Lamar, and Daryl. And so they just happened to be here, and they said, we'd like to go be with you, Dad. And I told them I'd be happy about that. We lived in Mississippi. Well, maybe I can back up a little bit more. Tell you where I was born at. I left home in 1947 and went to Utah to BYU. It wasn't much of a college at that little time, but it was a wonderful semester because I met my sweetheart. She was from Mississippi, so we speak the same language. Anyway, we ended up having a real good marriage. We served him. I was called into the military for 2 years, and I trained troops is what I did, and did the physical PE every morning also. And I stayed in the National Guard, and so I have 17 years of military. And I enjoyed every bit of that. It was a growing period for me too, but something I had great pleasure in doing. I finished up here when we moved up here, when we back up. We, well, I'm gonna end that military-wise. If you have any questions later on, you can just ask about if you have a question about the military part. I had the privilege of, Josephine had two brothers, Parley Holiday, and he's the one that came here with Dr. Kimball when they first started the project. We lived in Mississippi at that time. I was a bishop there for the church, and I was also on the school board, and this was during a period of time that we had that was real hard because of integration that was going on. We lived in Mississippi, where I lived at there, 70% was colored. And I didn't understand why they was, I won't get in on that part. That was a growing period for me too also. But I was on the school board, and we worked real hard to do the best we could with the school system. And so we did that. We were able to, we did a survey first, and we found out that the colored race, when they got in about the 7th grade, they dropped out of school. And so during the integration period there, we had unlimited federal funds. And so to help us out, so that we wouldn't be dropping out of school, we built another school, and it was to teach them mechanics, carpentry, and a few things like that. And so we were real successful of helping the groups on that part. I got a whole story about that, I won't tell it. Farley had, he went to BYU too, and Alan did too, and there was also, we were in a service together, and then we farmed together, and we also did different work too to supplement our family as it began to grow. I will just tell you that Farley was a bishop there, and he had a family that the father had killed the mother, and the judge was going to take the 4 children and put them out to different areas. And Farley come and talked to us about it. Now, at this period of time here, Josephine and I, after 10 years, we finally was able to adopt a little boy of 2 years old. And when he was 2 years old, this is when Farley come to ask us if we would consider taking the 4 children. And we told, did a little prayer about it, and told her to tell the judge that we would take all 4 of them so they wouldn't have to go to different areas. You know some of them because Sammy lived here, and won't get them. They've all passed away. I've outlived them, I'm sure, and that's no fun. Okay, where was I at now? Oh, Farley had he had a civil engineer degree, and so I don't know how it really happened, but they called him up and when they interviewed him to come up here and be the project manager for Nauvoo Restoration with Dr. Kimmel. And about a year after he came up here, we made a trip here on Thanksgiving Day and found out that the motel at that period of time, the couple that was managing it, the church owned the property, but they don't own motels, so they had another couple that was there, but she had to go to a better climate, dry climate, so we made the application, and so we took over the Village Inn Motel and had that for 27 years. At one period here, I had a grocery store. They say that you lose money the first year in business.
Yeah.
That's an absolute fact. I would not declare bankruptcy. That would not be something I would even consider. And so I went to work for Nauvoo Restoration for 14 years to pay off the bill that I had there at the grocery store. That was a growing period for me too on that power. I'm here to tell you that I love Nauvoo. My children loved it. My 2 wives have loved it. Josephine, my first one, for 47 years, and Marlene for 18 years. It is a wonderful place, not just because I'm a member of the church, but it's a place people that live here like it. I don't know what all I'm supposed to tell.
Maybe about how you became mayor or why you ran for mayor.
Oh,
How did that come about? You running for mayor?
okay, now we're talking about, we've been here, what, 71, about 7 years at least. And, I was surprised when a group of the citizens here came and asked me if I would run for mayor. I told them, well, I haven't had any political aspects of my life yet, but I told them I would consider it. And so, on that race there, Mr. Brother, in other words, I did not win the first time because I won 3rd Ward, 2nd Ward, but lost in 1st because at that time the academy was here and it had all the nuns that were here, that were living out their lives, which was really a nice facility they had and everything. It was just wonderful for them. But anyway, and so he served his term.
Who was that?
Wagaman. And so some of the town peoples come and asked me if I would run, and I did, and that time I won in all 3 areas. I love being the mayor. There's no other way to stick, because I got so acquainted with all the good fellows and sisters in our town, and how to be able to function as a mayor to help maybe the town to go forward. We had some good people working for us town-wise, and we also had the 2 sisters, or two ladies, office personnel. I couldn't have got along without them. They were so efficient in what they were doing, and always had everything set up for our meetings, and took care of. They took care of just about everything.
Do you remember who they were, Mayor Pierce? Do you remember who they were? The 2 sisters?
Yes, one of them still here. 2 of them still here.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Was Nadine, was she there? Nadine Anderson? And then there was Jane Hamma. Jane Hamma.
Well,
That was the one, because Carol took her after. That would have been the 80s.
my memory's not what it used to be.
Whose is? None of us are.
One's still here.
Carol might have been there.
She's been here all this time. She knows everything about the
She
town
does, that's for sure.
and how it functions, and she's really been a wonderful person to have, to be one of our clerks here.
Mayor, what was your biggest challenge during your term? What was the hardest thing, if you remember, the biggest challenge to overcome? You said you loved the people and getting acquainted with all the fellas and ladies, but what was your biggest challenge at that period?
Well, we had several challenges. One of the challenges we had when we first got here and became the mayor, at that period of time, the sewer place down there was, all the other towns were doing too. The sewage was dumped in the river. And so we went through that, getting that taken care of, which was one of the big things. We was having some problem with the water system too, to keep it safe for the town and all. So we had a lot of work toward that there. I was real pleased because we had some good city workers, and they were dedicated, and most of them are still doing for the town. And I'm sure that the mayor there will agree on that part.
I hope you and my brother Bobby got along. I don't know if he was in your term or not. Bobby Solon, he was an alderman. I don't know if that was during John's term or Mayor's.
I remember Bobby real well.
Okay, good. I see the twinkle. Yeah.
What was the thing you're most proud of accomplishing as mayor?
I don't know. I'll just tell you a few of the things that we did.
That works.
We made sure that our employees was first, making sure that they were pleased with what they were responsible for. And so we had some dedicated people that we continue to do. We just asked them to do their very best all the time when they were doing what they were responsible for. And of course, like I say, the 2 ladies was already taking care of me. A few things that I did that I felt that we hired a lawyer, and we hired don't get real mature because you can't remember certain things.
You did the engineering firm probably?
Yeah, yes, we hired us to the engineer was another thing.
That had never been done, but there was no engineer or lawyer for the city before you.
No, so we did that. We had a lot of projects, and the town was supportive when we was doing any project at all, if they were needed, and that was another good thing that happened. I said we hired a lawyer, okay, and we hired her.
The engineer.
You know what I'm talking about in different areas. And we rely on those folks.
You hope they tell you the right thing.
Yeah.
And you were one term,
Sorry.
a one-term mayor.
Yes, I only did one term, because like I said, I was a bishop, and I was doing this, trying to make a livelihood also. My wife had her first battle with cancer, breast cancer, and I felt that. They've asked me every time they come around to run again.
I know, yeah.
But I felt like that someone else had that privilege. And I see that's why he had that privilege.
I wouldn't have ran if you would have.
No, I would, if everything, I would have run again if it hadn't been for that.
Breast cancer, your voice.
But they've asked me lots of times, but I've come to the age I feel like that somebody else needs to be in a position of that. A little bit younger.
Mayor, what would you like to see for the future of Nauvoo? This is 2025. Do you have any grand vision or a vision for the future for Nauvoo?
I have thoughts about stuff, but I don't really know. I'd like to see a junior college here. I felt real good about that, but I'd be left up to the church to do that.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah. Anybody, questions, other questions for the mayor?
Who followed you as mayor?
Anyway, I really enjoyed being the mayor, and I would have tried again, and they've asked me every time.
Hey, Dad, they asked who followed.
Who followed? Who came after you?
Was it Bruger after you?
Who came after you?
Maybe Dale Bruger or Dave Knowles, I can't remember. Maybe Dave Knowles.
Raymond, you remember? No? Bev, you remember? Do you remember?
No, I don't remember.
I don't remember. It was either Dale Bruger or Dave Knowles.
Probably Dave Knowles. Probably Dave Knowles would be my guess, probably.
One of them, I guess. I don't
Well, again, thank you. Okay, our next speaker, the next mayor is Mayor John McCarty. He's an old friend of mine. John, you were 2 years younger than me. You're 74, is that right?
78.
No, I was gonna say, he's, no, you're thinking of his older brother.
Okay.
You're thinking of his older brother.
I remember John was this guy used to have
And he was
incredible
75.
work on vans. Oh my God, this man could make, he could trick out a van, put a fireplace in a van, stereo system. I'm serious. They were literally incredible during that time period. He saw that artistry coming through. And also, I have to say, I love tennis. He was a mean tennis player. We used to have some good singles and doubles playing here on the old grade school courts, and just a real good guy. And again, so I'll let John tell his story of 4 terms, right, John?
Yes.
I like the car stories too.
Yeah.
He learned from from an old expert, Mr. Beasley.
Well, I had to write notes down. I'm not as good as this guy. I can't remember everything right off. Years are, I get really confused on them. But if you started in '78, that's the year I graduated, so that's probably why I stuck around Nauvoo instead of moving away. I knew we had a good guy at the helm. You know, you try to figure out why you run for mayor and why you do certain things. And he said it, you love your town, you want to do what you can for your town. This gentleman right here, and that party holiday guy he was talking about, changed the whole atmosphere of Nauvoo. When they came here, I know you guys are in the historical society and you've read all this stuff. There's a lot of animosity in this town between the LDS and the non-LDS. And it was even in my household. I'd always hear my dad make comments and stuff. And we started slowly getting these people moving into town. They were just like everybody else, but a lot friendlier. And this man came down to my dad when he was running for mayor. And I still remember my dad offering him a beer right off the bat. And Hugh, in his kind way, says, I'd really like to do that, but I got other houses to go to. And Dad come in the house and he goes, that's a fine gentleman right there. He said, he's got my vote. And you changed the atmosphere of Nauvoo. And I appreciate what you did. And I also learned that sometimes you got to give of yourself to give to others. And I really didn't plan on becoming mayor. I didn't even plan on becoming a city council member, but I had some issues with my land and the drainage coming across there, and the people across the street built these big cardboard apartments, and I call them Cardboard City because it just looks wonderful over there, but when they built it, they changed the flow of the land, and all the water from that block, instead of running to the west, ran to the north, right to my place. And whenever it rained about 2 or 3 inches, it'd come across the road and it'd flood out my driveway and take every bit of rock and railroad ties that I'd put in there and just wash them across my yard. And that happened about 3 years straight, and I got tired of it, and I went and complained to the city council, and they couldn't do anything. They said, well, there's nothing we can do. So my dad told me, he said, well, if you're going to keep bitching, you might as well run for city council, and you can be on the other side and do something about it. I went, oh, okay. We did come to a conclusion on how to fix it. I ended up paying for everything, but we got it fixed. They just put a new culvert in, so, and that wasn't on your watch, so, okay. That was after you. So right then I thought, if you're gonna do something for your city, you gotta be more than just a voice complaining. You gotta be on the other side. So I did run for city council, and unfortunately nobody ran against me, so I got it. And, I started out, I'd worked on the planning commission before that, but then when I got on the city council, really not a whole lot went on during that days. It was pretty slow going, and Mayor Wilson was in charge. And if you don't know Tom or never knew Tom, he was quite an individual, I tell you. He came from the farm grounds into the city, but he was a very intelligent man. But he could make you think he was a crazy old fool, because it was just the way he'd act. But he had your number, and he just would sit there and act like he didn't care and didn't know, but he had everything going the whole time. And he said, you just got to remember, you got to hear both sides of the story, and if you don't like the one, just keep listening. You might hear something you like. I'm like, okay. So he said, just don't speak until you hear it all. Well, about a year into that, they said, well, the LDS Church has announced they're going to build the temple in Nauvoo. And I'm like, oh, so much for an easy job being on the city council. You don't have to worry about high grass and, you know, old cars sitting on the side of the road. We got to worry about this now. So that started my first run of learning how politics worked in a little town this size. And I'm just like Mr. Pierce here. I'm not a politician. And I learned a lot in a short amount of time. Mayor Wilson said, you know, I'm not going to run again. He said, I think you ought to consider it. So I kicked it around and I decided to do it. And again, lucky me, nobody else ran too, so I got in there. And it was, the transition time was when the temple was done and the changes were coming into town. We were under this big scare. Basically, we were told when the temple was going to be built that 5,000 people would move to Nauvoo, and you're going to need to do this this, and you gotta change your infrastructure, and you gotta add more streets and more water, more sewer. Police force has gotta grow. And as you can see, the population went from 1,100 to 900 and some now, so we've really grown that 5 But the whole time as being a mayor, what you have to look at is the future. And I know I'm talking the historical side, and you guys care about the past. Well, if you're the mayor, the past don't matter anymore unless you can learn from it. But you can't dwell on what maybe should have been or could still be. It's what's going to happen down the road. So you automatically look 5 years ahead, 10 years ahead. Nauvoo had never had a comprehensive plan that was up to date. So that was one of the first goals as a mayor. I wanted to try to get that started. So we formed committees and we started in on that. And we were lucky enough to get a comprehensive plan passed. It's completely outdated now, I'm sure. It needs updated. Some of the areas we did fix and do. Some of the things just never came to be because of the fact people didn't move here. Businesses didn't just knock down the door to come here. We didn't get that junior college, which I wish we could have got. You know, we got starts that never really came through. But we had, as a mayor, you have highs and lows. You just pray when you get done, the highs are better than the lows. And we had some tough ones. I mean, we lost the cheese factory. We lost St. Mary's Academy. We lost the grocery store. We lost our school, you know, different things like that. But you have to try to push, and not everybody's going to agree with how you do it, but you got to push for something new to come in. And we were always told we were stupid sometimes, and you hear that from about 90% of the population, that you're stupid and you don't know what you're doing, but yet they won't ever put their name on a ballot and sit down and tell you how smart they can be. So you bank on the people working with you to be your good voices. And I've had some really good city council members work with me over the years. A few of them are in the room tonight. Mr. Shirt, Gene is, he was my go-to guy when I was like, I don't know if that'll work or not. He said, well, let me tell you how it works. And he would explain it, and then I could figure it out. But city workers, like I said, you have to have good office staff. You got to have good municipal workers, because the town doesn't just run on its own. It's a machine, and all the gears got to be rolling. But to get those gears moving, you got to oil them, and that oil them is money. The whole thing behind a small town is you have to pay your own bills. And every year when you're thinking of how you're going to get things going, you have to look at that budget and figure out what can you do and what can't be done with the money coming in. And it's real easy to have people in town tell you, and I think you only bugged me for about 8 years about getting that road paved over there to King Road. I want my road fixed. I want a new sewer. I want this and everything. But when I started out on city council, I think we were getting $60,000 to $70,000 a year motor fuel tax money. And then the state of Illinois decided, whoa, these towns are getting way too much. We want to keep a lot of that. So I think we get 30-some thousand now. Yeah. Well, if you do one block in a town, let's say you do curb sidewalks, do a new street, and put water and sewer in, that's $280,000 one block, not around the block, one length of the block. And this was 15 years ago, so $30,000 isn't going to get you very far. So we made some tough decisions back then of doing a TIF district. That went over like a lead balloon with some people. They thought we were stupid, because the bad thing is a TIF district is tax increment financing. And anytime you throw the word tax in any damn thing, there people are thinking you're raising my taxes. Well, and it says tax increment. Well, they're thinking, well, it's going to raise it up. Dumbest words it could have ever put title of a thing. So we get to going on that to try to figure out a way to generate revenue in this town without raising property taxes. Because as we know, after 5 years of the temple being here, everybody's property value kind of did a little jump, and we lost a lot of people. People couldn't afford the taxes, moved out. New people moved in, but they didn't move in as permanent residents. They were buying homes, speculating on using them for rentals and everything else. We live off of state financing and real estate taxes. Well, the less people you have, the less money you get from the state. So we got creative with the TIF district to try to generate some revenue for the city to build streets and other infrastructure. And it started out slow, and everybody's saying, you know, it's not gonna gain anything, and it did. It took several years, because we made an agreement with the school district. We'd give them what they needed. We didn't take money away from them. So instead of being a full-blown TIF district, we got half of what we could have. But it also put less burden on the taxpayers. You didn't have to pay a difference to compensate what we took away from the school. So it built up slow, but I mean, the last I heard, it's pushing probably closer to 500,000 in that account now. So that'll get you around the block now, probably, with the street. So we did that to always look at the taxpayer not being the one to be burdened. We put in, after partly halfway through my term, we got the notification that the LDS Church was going to take 26 properties off the tax rolls, and that was several $1 million off of the tax base. So the revenue dropped again. The city portion of that was $58,000 a year. That's just the city, not schools or fire department or anybody else. So trying to figure out another way to do this fairly without going after each individual homeowner, because if you really look now, probably 40% of the land in this town is the ones that are paying the taxes. You know, the rest is, we've got a lot of property in town that's tax exempt. So we put in a municipal tax for utilities. So there's a small percentage of your electric and gas, everybody has to pay that. And that figured out the first time we did the math on it. Another one of my city council members come in, Chuck Gilbert, he was the man that could crunch numbers. And he said, well, if we do the 0.5%, we'll get $58,000 a year probably. I'm like, well, that's perfect. That's exactly what we're going to be short. So we started that in on a slow roll so that people weren't hit so bad. Because when we did citywide garbage pickup, wow, you'd have thought we'd have taken their firstborn child away from them the way people were spending. It's like, I've never paid for garbage. I'm like, well, yeah, but it's kind of what you got to do. And oh, we heard how terrible we were, but now everybody loves it. We got a recycling program. We've got citywide garbage. It's cheaper than doing it individually. But yeah, when we started that, it's the municipal tax. Chuck said, we'll slow roll it in and it'll be a lot easier. And well, I don't think anybody even knew it was on there. So we bumped it up a few years later to the full amount we could. And I've never heard one complaint on it yet. If I hear it tonight, it's too bad I'm not the mayor anymore. But it's always a matter of trying to figure out where to grab the money without causing issues with people that you got to face every day. And actually, you and I are those people. I'm paying taxes too, and the last thing I want to do is tax myself even more. So that was always the job you had to do as mayor. The mayor, I told someone one time, they said, so what are your actual duties? I said, well, I'm really kind of do three things. I said, I'm kind of like a cheerleader to try to encourage my city council members. I'm a referee sometimes to get them from fighting with each other. And I said, and then sometimes I'm just the dummy that has to take the hit too. You know, if somebody wants to complain, call me, complain to me. I mean, I can take it. Half the time, I don't even remember who called me. I just hung out my head. I was so glad when cell phones came out too that nobody has those numbers. And it's also call under ID. It's a good thing to have as well. You get that same call every week. But the mayor job, someone told me one time, they said, well, you know, you make good money being mayor. And oh, yeah. I never thought of it that way. When I started out, I was getting $300 a month to be the mayor, so that was $10 a day, I figured out. So when someone would come in and talk to me for about an hour, and then someone else wanted to talk, I go, I've already used up my 1 hour of the day. I get $10 an hour. Okay, that's what I figured a rate. So you never did it for the money. You did it because you loved your town, and it's really easy to love Nauvoo. I was born here in 1959, and been here ever since. Part of it's because I can't afford to go anywhere else. I know growing up, the town was small enough you could ride a bicycle from one end to the other because I did it every day with the newspaper out. And someone asked me, well, how's it changed? I said, it hasn't changed a bit. It's the same distance from one to the other. The only thing that hasn't changed is I can't ride a bicycle that far. That's the only thing changed. But a lot of things came out of the 16 years of being in there, a lot more I wish I could have done. Again, it just comes down to having the finances to do it and having the manpower to do it. And we were very lucky, and I've got some of the things that happened. Of course, when we went home rule, that made a big difference, but that was actually before I became mayor. But home rule gave us the advantage of putting that municipal tax in. It also gave us the advantage of using hotel motel tax dollars for city infrastructure and needs too. Before you couldn't do that. We were just looking at ways to get money from revenue sources that didn't impact the residents. Of course, we lost the academy, like I said. I started a mayor's roundtable, and I did that because I had all these thoughts of what I thought needed to be done in Nauvoo, and I thought, well, you know, I should probably listen to other people, and people weren't coming to meetings, city council meetings, and talking because they felt uncomfortable. So the mayor's roundtable was pretty casual, and once it got started, a lot of good ideas came out of that, and a lot of things started from that. Nauvoo Betterment Association was one of them. I mean, that group took off from that first groups that we got together talking about ideas, what could be done. And it was one of those things where I said, well, those are all great, but the city can't afford these. So the Betterment started in figuring out ways to do these projects, fund these projects on their own. And that, to me, that's one of the top things for what I consider accomplishments in the 16 years. And it's just, that's still going strong, and there's still a great group of people here, you know, pushing that. The Uptown Walking Tour, again, we finished the comprehensive plan. We had a governor's award for small towns because of all the things that were happening here. We got a nature trail grant award for that and sidewalks. That was probably the greatest news we ever heard until we found out that the federal government and the state of Illinois thought it would be smarter if they went together on the same project, and that way it'd be a lot easier to get this done. So instead of the starting date in 30 days, it was 2.5 years later, we got started, and the price of the sidewalks went from about $40,000 a block to about $80,000. So thanks for the federal government and the state getting together to make it better for us. So that ended up costing us a little more in the long run, but we did get sidewalks from one end of town to all the way down to the bank corner, and then we did get them around the curve and down to Water Street. And then the nature trail along Water Street is just, to me, is a really great addition for Nauvoo. I mean, it's a good way to see more of Nauvoo than you've ever seen before in a safe manner. The Uptown Walking Tour, like I mentioned, that's another thing. It tells the history, and a lot of people come here just for it, but they're hearing all the history, which is great. We lost our grocery store, but then a market started up after it. I mean, this town was finding ways to bounce back all the time. Unfortunately, the market closed, and then the next thing happened, Dollar General come to town. So we have our own Walmart right here in Nauvoo. And if you ask some people, they have to have their Dollar General. And it has been a godsend for Nauvoo, I think. When I told you about the tax rolls being reduced down and the amount of money that we lost, it was quite a bit to take on. Well, the church was kind enough to enter into a pilot program with us, and that's payment in lieu of taxes. This is state of Illinois' other great things is their rules and regulations on pilot programs is you cannot discuss with the other party ahead of time on what any agreements are going to be. It has to be done the year of when it starts. So even though the church would say, we're going to do a pilot program and we'll give you money, we couldn't enter into it until that year. And then they had no reason to do it another 5 years. And we had no idea if they would do it in 5 years. So that's why we did these things to try to generate that revenue in case they stopped. Well, the first 5 years, they were kind enough to give all the taxing bodies the same amount of taxes they would have got instead of paying the tax. And then the second 5-year plan that they did was a stair-step effect. It went 80 to 60 to 40, 20 to 0. So we're done now. There is no compensation. I think it's 2019 was the last in that, or that might have been when we started, excuse me. We're on our last payments. And that was one of them. Again, you don't have unlimited funds running into this town, so getting things done the way we wanted to was tough, but I think we made do with very little and did quite a bit. Then probably one of the really highlights of my career was in 2020, and this thing called COVID came around. You talk about trying to finish out your last term as mayor on a high note. That came in and decided to just knock you right down to your knees real quick. I was really proud of our community. We were resilient. We stuck to the rules. We did what we were told. Our town was probably one of the least, in number-wise, of cases being passed on. People followed the rules. They did what was right. We had businesses that struggled. We came together as a town to help businesses file for state assistance, government help that was out there. We also used our TIF program to help pay rent payments for some of the people that couldn't afford them in town and their businesses, especially the school that we were renting out. We just turned down any kind of payments for that until it was over with. We realized people were going to be struggling. We didn't want to lose any more business after this. And everybody pretty much opened back up afterwards, which was a positive note for Nauvoo. And all those grants that we helped people apply for in town, those were really great. They were for, I think, the assistance for the money lost in 2020, and I think in 2022 they finally issued the checks. So again, Illinois is just wonderful, helping you out all the time. We're this little town that nobody knows about, apparently, except 250,000 people from out west that come here every year. But you can go 2 hours over to Springfield, and they don't even know where you're. They don't even know Nauvoo's in Illinois. That's the problem. And that was probably one of the saddest things of being mayor of a small town. They thought we had everything we needed because we have all this revenue coming in from the tourists and everything else. So we were never on the top of their list of a town that needed help. And I could probably find you 20 letters that I sent to our representative, Randy Freeze, who apparently must have died because he never responded once. I never heard from him in all the times. Jill Tracy was one of the few that would respond back, but her hands were tied again. She tried and tried, couldn't do it. And it came down to where one of the last big acts before I got out was this building right here.
Mayors who like people and are good with people, you know, I always talk about it like pressing the glad hand, you know. There were a lot of fun times, obviously, in your tenures as mayor. I know, John, you enjoy that part of it too, don't you?
You got to meet people you never would have got to meet before.
Right.
Some I wish I never would have met, but I mean, I had the honor of meeting President Hinckley when they came here for the temple. I mean, I wasn't even mayor then, but I mean, I was involved to a point where I could meet with him. I got a chance to meet Barack Obama because John Sullivan made arrangements because I was the mayor. If I was just John McCarty, I don't think it would have happened. So some of those things, the mayor had some perks, but the biggest one is, again, working with people that cared the same as you did, and that was the fun part of it. Gene saw me on a good side. When Gene would walk out the door, I probably threw things and said something. I was Christian to another person's face. You just gotta let it all roll off your shoulders. I mean, people are gonna complain, and the one election I was in, there was a smear campaign, is what I called it, for lack of better terms. A lot of lies came up and comments were made, and I'm like, this is Nauvoo. I mean, what are we doing? I mean, we don't spread rumors and lies. I mean, you don't, like I say, you're not doing it. There's no political gain from being the mayor. You lose a lot of sleep. I lost a lot of money being the mayor because I'd be here instead of working at home. So I just think there's some the sad times in Nauvoo has been because some people don't realize it and don't love the community as much as you and I do.
I say amen to all of that.
Okay, thank you, John.
Thank you.